Hello, my name is Donna, and I am 29 years old, currently preparing for the arrival of my baby at home. However, my relationship with my mother-in-law is strained. She often speaks ill of me to my husband when she thinks I'm not within earshot. Her harsh words claim that I am unkind, unhelpful, and lack good qualities. Despite my desire to confront her, my pregnancy urges me to maintain peace, so I choose to focus on self-care and the excitement of meeting my soon-to-arrive baby. To keep my spirits up, I engage in daily walks and talk to my growing belly, enjoying these precious moments of anticipation. But these peaceful times are often interrupted by my mother-in-law's unexpected visits. She tends to stay longer than welcome, criticizing everything from the meals I prepare to the decor in the baby's nursery. When my baby was born, it was a joyful yet hectic time. I cherished the experience of raising my daughter in the cheerful environment of my childhood home. I informed my husband that I would return to our place by the next weekend, though deep inside I longed to extend my stay. At home, the distribution of household responsibilities weighed on my mind. My husband showed little interest in housework, which added to my concerns as I held my sleeping daughter, Amanda. I whispered to her, envisioning the changes we'd make to create a cozy, welcoming space in what would be her new home. Arriving at our house laden with bags, I hoped for a helping hand as I rang the doorbell, but there was no answer. I managed to unlock the door and enter, only to discover a scene of chaos. The living room was in disarray, not just untidy but seemingly ransacked. Fearing a break-in, I hurried outside and dialed the police, my voice trembling as I explained the situation, all while my baby began to cry, heightening my panic. In that moment of distress, a kind neighbor noticed our plight and offered us refuge in their home. They helped soothe my fears and comforted my daughter, who soon fell asleep again after being fed. This gesture of kindness amidst the turmoil was a small solace on an overwhelming day. When the police sirens echoed nearby, I walked back to my home with the neighbor's comforting presence beside me. The front door remained securely locked. Overwhelmed by the disarray I had discovered earlier in the living room, I hadn't dared to check the rest of the house. As I recounted the situation to the police, they praised my decision to stay outside, explaining the potential danger of confronting a burglar. Their words made me realize the gravity of the situation, amplifying my initial fears. Just as I finished explaining, a voice tinged with uncertainty cut through the tension. "What's going on? Why are the police here?" It was my mother-in-law. I quickly briefed her. "It's serious, our house was broken into and we suspect it was a burglary. The police are here checking everything." Before she could respond, I felt a sudden sharp pain on my cheek. My mother-in-law had slapped me. My vision swam with the shock, and amid the gathering crowd of neighbors and officers, I instinctively clutched my stinging cheek. Her face was flushed with anger as she shouted, accusing me of being irresponsible for involving the police in a burglary. Her reaction stunned me. I couldn't fathom why she was so furious, especially with the pain now throbbing in my cheek. A neighbor stepped in, trying to explain that calling the police was the appropriate action and that their role was precisely to handle such incidents. However, my mother-in-law was relentless. She continued to berate me for having returned to my parents' home during my childbirth period, calling me useless for not staying at home to manage the household duties. She was upset that I had caused a scene by summoning the police. Despite the attempts of everyone around to calm the situation and defend my actions, her anger did not subside. Her words echoed in my ears, adding to the surreal and distressing atmosphere of the day. As I tried to understand the unfolding chaos, I noticed something odd. Despite our home potentially being burglarized, my mother-in-law showed no concern for any missing items. Furthermore, it struck me as strange that even though this was the first time she was meeting her grandchild, she displayed no interest in her. My attempts to make sense of the situation seemed to fall on deaf ears, as no one around seemed to support my perspective. "That's not the point. How can you accuse me without even apologizing?" I challenged her, but she blatantly ignored my question and continued with her tirade. "What's happening here?" Suddenly, my husband Scott interrupted, his demeanor surprisingly calm amidst the tension. "Scott, listen to this, it's awful," my mother-in-law exclaimed, her face brightening at the sight of her son. "Donna has called the police, can you believe it? She insists we've been burglarized, but that's just ridiculous," she scoffed. "Is that true, Donna? Maybe you're mistaken about the burglary? It's bothering the neighbors, you know, and the police have other things to deal with," Scott said, attempting to defuse the situation. I was taken aback, not just by my mother-in-law's dismissal, but also by Scott's unexpected stance. "Wait, Scott, our house isn't just messy. The police are still investigating. We can't be sure if it's a burglary, but something is wrong with how things are inside. We need to check if anything's missing and file a report," I insisted. "No, absolutely not," Scott cut me off sternly. "But why?" The confusion was mounting, making the conversation increasingly bewildering. Tears began to well up in my eyes as the reality set in. I had returned to a home where no one was present, and everything was in disarray. The lack of support and the dismissive attitudes of my husband and mother-in-law left me feeling utterly isolated and misunderstood. The distress of not knowing what had happened to our home compounded my emotional turmoil. As I attempted to clarify the confusing situation, a realization dawned on me. Despite the potential that our home had been burglarized, my mother-in-law showed no concern for any missing items. Moreover, it baffled me that despite this being the first time she was meeting her grandchild, she seemed utterly disinterested. Around me, support was lacking. No one seemed to echo my concerns. "That's not the point. How can you accuse me without even apologizing?" I challenged her, only to be met with complete dismissal as she continued to press her argument. At that moment, my husband Scott intervened, his tone surprisingly calm amid the turmoil. "Scott, listen to this. It's just awful," my mother-in-law said, her expression brightening at the sight of her son. "Donna called the police, can you believe it? She claims we've been burglarized, but that's simply not possible. Scott, please tell her to stop being so ridiculous," she persisted. Scott turned to me. "Is that true, Donna? Maybe you're mistaken about the burglary? It's causing quite a stir among the neighbors, and the police surely have more pressing issues to attend to. Let's just send them away soon," he suggested, trying to pacify the situation. I was stunned, not merely by my mother-in-law's reaction, but also by Scott's response as well. "Wait, Scott, our house isn't just untidy. The police are still here investigating. We can't confirm if it was a burglary yet, but something is not right. We need to check if anything is missing and possibly file a report," I explained earnestly. "No, absolutely not," Scott cut me off abruptly, raising his voice. "But why?" I asked, the conversation spiraling into more confusion by the second. I felt increasingly lost and overwhelmed, tears beginning to well up in my eyes. Returning to find my home in disarray, and no one present had been frightening, and now the lack of understanding from my own family intensified my distress. As I tried to hold back my sobs, a kind neighbor noticed my distress and came over to offer a comforting embrace. Their warmth was a small solace, allowing the tears I had been fighting to finally escape. As the situation unfolded before me, both my mother-in-law and husband appeared irritated and simply stared as I tried to explain. "Why won't you understand?" My voice echoed my distress, and it seemed to affect my daughter too as she woke up crying. Their annoyance only deepened at her cries, adding to the tension. With the neighbors showing kindness and the police giving concerned looks, I ended up spending the night at a neighbor's house after it was suggested. "Donna's just overreacting, let's go inside." My mother-in-law dismissed the situation while my husband added, "Yeah, Donna, calm down." They seemed unfazed by the chaos in our home and went inside quickly after the police concluded their preliminary investigation. Standing in front of the closed door of my neighbor's house, I recalled my husband's earlier dismissive words and how he still allowed his mother to treat him like a child, which he found annoying. He usually chose to go along with her just to avoid conflict, a habit that now left me stranded and hurt. Despite feeling isolated, I couldn't just stay outside indefinitely. After apologizing repeatedly for the disruption, I spent the night at my neighbor's house, whispering to my daughter as she fell asleep, "Mom needs to be strong. I'll do my best." The next day, I returned home to find my mother-in-law and husband already there. "Did you stay here last night with everything in such a mess?" my mother-in-law questioned, pointing out the living room, which was somewhat tidied up, enough for them to sit, but still visibly chaotic. I had checked the other rooms with the police the day before, and it was clear that things had been thrown out of storage in all of them. The mess was everywhere. Despite always criticizing my cleaning, my mother-in-law had stayed in the house in that condition without making any effort to tidy up. She just sat there looking displeased. "What do you mean, did you really?" I was taken aback by her tone and implication that I had somehow abandoned my family by staying away, even though it was she who had shown no empathy or assistance during the ordeal. Her words stung, highlighting the deep misunderstandings and lack of support that had come to define this challenging moment. I countered their accusations with a firm reply, "It's not that I left, it's that you wouldn't listen to what I was saying." "What? How dare you speak like that?" my mother-in-law exclaimed, her face quickly contorting into anger. Scott jumped in, attempting to downplay the situation. "Have you calmed down now?" he asked in a tone that only fueled my frustration further. Something inside me reached its limit. "You're right, it's not like we were burgled, huh?" I said, my voice surprisingly calm despite the tumult inside. Scott merely smirked, seemingly satisfied with his assumption. "Finally realized it, huh? Yeah, you were overreacting about the burglary anyway. Start cleaning up," he directed, as if the mess was entirely my concern. "Cleaning and taking care of the house are a wife's duties, aren't they?" My mother-in-law chimed in with a sickeningly sweet tone, as though she were speaking to a child or a pet. "I'm not cleaning up. It's your mess, so you should clean it," I retorted, feeling diminished by their demeaning attitudes. "What? How dare you?" As expected, they reacted poorly to my defiance. "You're such a terrible wife. Get to work," my mother-in-law snapped, clearly annoyed. "What a hassle," my husband grumbled in agreement. That was the last straw for me. I handed them the divorce papers I had prepared and filled out first thing in the morning. "I want a divorce," I stated firmly. My husband blinked, surprised by my decisiveness. "That's right, I want a divorce right now," I declared, my resolve unwavering. At that moment, my mother-in-law snatched the divorce papers dramatically, feigning distress. "Oh, poor Scott, being treated like this is so awful," she lamented as she consoled him, treating him like a child. "Such a big baby, aren't you?" I thought bitterly, my patience completely exhausted. "What did you just say, Donna?" they both snapped, their anger reaching a boiling point. "Did you not hear me, or are you pretending not to understand?" "Scott, sign the divorce papers now." I knew it was petty. I knew I shouldn't stoop to their level, but I was not going to back down this time. At that point, I couldn't care less about their demands. "Stop joking around and apologize," they shouted, pushing me to the ground and pinning me down forcefully. Scott's strength was overwhelming, making it hard for me to breathe, and tears filled my eyes. Just then, my parents arrived, rushing to my aid, followed by the friendly officer I had met the previous day. Gasping for air, a wave of relief washed over me as I saw them. "Why are you barging in here like this? Leave immediately," my mother-in-law demanded, her voice laced with outrage, as she and my husband were restrained by the officer, struggling and squirming against his grip. "It's useless. You've been caught assaulting someone," the officer declared. With my father's help, I stood up, my resolve strengthening as I looked at the two figures still trying to break free. "Actually, I asked the officer to come and check on the situation from yesterday. I never expected an attack," I explained calmly, my voice steady despite the chaos. "What's happening?" my husband growled, confusion and anger mixing in his voice. We have a baby monitor camera installed in this house for our little Amanda, I continued, unfazed by his tone. It's a live stream camera. It didn't record the person who trashed the room, but I paused, noticing their sudden relaxation. So what if it's a live camera? The kind neighbor who helped us yesterday is watching over this room right now. They listened to your conversation yesterday, along with a lot of people at the police station. My parents were watching too. After my mother-in-law and husband had retreated behind the door the previous day, I started checking the baby monitor camera. The police had already suspected that the whole break-in seemed fishy, perhaps even staged. I laid out the possibility not just my mother-in-law but my husband too might be involved. They guessed right. When I came home, the room was all messy, and you both acted surprised, blaming me for it. You planned to make my parents apologize by saying they didn't want a daughter-in-law who would do something like that. My voice was firm, conveying the betrayal and hurt they had orchestrated. This revelation seemed to seal their fate as they realized the depth of the evidence against them. As I stood before everyone, the tension was palpable. You didn't even want a daughter-in-law because we had a baby girl, not a boy. You wanted to replace me with someone else, right? And what's this about an affair you approved? I blurted out everything, laying bare the painful truths. The room turned cold, all eyes fixed on them. It must be a mistake, my husband stammered, his voice betraying his nervousness. No way. I would never cheat. Donna, do you still have more to say? Stop this nonsense, my mother-in-law snapped, momentarily losing her composure, which only alienated her further from everyone else. I stood my ground, unwilling to be judged on such unfair terms. I don't want a family that doesn't care about how our baby is doing. It's not right that our neighbor, who has been looking after her, shows more love than my own family. The decision was clear in my mind. I'm going back to my parents' house. Yes, I'll file for divorce and fight for custody of our daughter. It seems that's what you all wanted. No, wait a minute, not to the police station. I don't want to go. Let go. Both my mother-in-law and husband caused a scene as the police took them away. In the aftermath, they became infamous in the neighborhood and not in a good way. They tried to make amends by offering me a divorce settlement, but it was too late. The rumors had already spread, and despite their insistence, no one believed them. I returned to my parents' house, where I am now raising my daughter with their support. Through a friend's recommendation, I found a job nearby. It's not easy and I have my worries, but when I see my daughter's smiling face, I feel a renewed determination to do my best. I'll work hard to raise Amanda well, ensuring she grows up nothing like her father.